All right, well, let's talk about some self-control. You want to do that? Let's continue to talk about freedom. Let's talk about relationships. Let's talk about healthy relationships. And and continuing on in this series, With Me or Without Me, the point of relationships is with me. The point of relationships is connection, right? The goal of relationship is connection. And so what we want to try to protect is connection in relationships. And so if connection is in jeopardy, the relationship is in jeopardy. Make sense? So hey kids, thanks. You guys are headed out on your own. But so in order for me to have healthy relationships, it's common sense then that I need to protect the capacity for connection. Because without it, no relationship will exist. We've also talked about in this series, we've talked about this idea of freedom. This idea of freedom that in relationship, in healthy relationship, I'm not in control of you, and you're not in control of me. And there's freedom that rises up from that. There's freedom that comes. But what freedom requires is self-control. Someone's got to be in control of me. Who is it going to be? Well, if I'm not going to be in control of me, then what happens is in relationships is I offer my control away, and other people feel, because they're afraid of me, that they have to control me. But if I'm in control of myself, and I'm doing that well, there's no need for you to control me. Because now in relationship, I'm honoring you. I'm a safe place for you. I'm protecting your heart. Difficulty comes in this idea of control and self-control is that we last week we even talked about this. We walk in these paradigms that it kind of goes upstream from here. In other words, we're downstream from it. But our concept of God matters in how we even think of ourselves. And so if I think that God is in control, and I say, well, I want to be like God, then all of a sudden I feel like I need to control my environments too. Because God is in control of the environments around me. And so if I carry a theology or a doctrine that God is in control, in other words, He's responsible, right? He's making decisions for everybody. Then, or if He's not making decisions, which is the same thing, if I'm making the decision or I'm not making a decision, which means that the circumstances are all ultimately God's responsibility. Then if I think that, then I'm striving to be like God, then I have this thing working inside of me that says, well, then I must be in control. I got to get into a control place. Controlling my environments. The opposite of that is this. Wait a minute. If God isn't in control, but He expects everyone to be in control of themselves, just like He is in control of Himself, then if I believe that God is in self-control, this idea that He controls Himself, He's in perfect control of Himself, but not trying to control other people or other people's environments, because He's trying to enable them to be like Him, who is perfect control of Himself. He wants you to be in perfect control of yourself. Then, now I can aspire to be like Him. But oftentimes what happens is we walk around with this dualism. Okay, I'm supposed to be in control of me, but you're controlling everything else. And it doesn't fit. It doesn't work together. And so it creates this dualism, which really, this dualism disempowers us. And it makes us walk around like, do I say yes or I say no? Do I say yes or I say no? I'm in this place. So here's the deal about the culture of heaven. The culture of heaven is, if the culture of heaven is Galatians 5, that the fruit of the Spirit of God, the manifestation of who God is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. If that is the nature of God revealed, if that is who He is, that's the fruit of who He is, that's manifest, that we feel and sense those things about who God is. If that's who God is, then that is what heaven is like. Because Heaven is the place, it's the realm, it's the environment upon which everything that God is manifested through, right? So heaven, the kingdom of God is where the king's will holds unhindered sway. The king's nature is made manifest. It's the kingdom of God. So when we see things like love and joy and peace that are manifesting in front of us or through other people, we're manifesting or we're experiencing the kingdom of God, because that's who God is. And so the culture of heaven is the culture of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, all that. But self-control is what I want to focus in on. Self-discipline is another word for that. The ability to make a choice and to follow through with it. That's what self-control is. Some of the questions that kind of rise up in me as we walk through some of this is, how does a free people, because we're all free, and the Lord is empowering our freedom, but what I mentioned even last week, one of the dilemmas of freedom is that we haven't been trained, we haven't been taught, we haven't been equipped to manage freedom well. And so what we often do is we try to control instead. But freedom, in order for you to be free, it means the only ones in control of you is you. And the fact of the matter, if I overstep my bounds and try to control you, I'm actually stepping outside of who God is. I'm actually stepping outside of His fruit, His manifestation. I'm actually operating out of fear. You see, love doesn't try to control anything, because it's not afraid of anything. Love is the opposite of fear. But how does a free people discover how to make choices based upon love, based upon wants, based upon passions, based upon desires, not based upon needs? You understand that even need, the idea of need kind of is underneath this. While need could be very neutral, often for us, need falls under the fear category. I gotta get my needs met. And if I don't get my needs met, I'm afraid of what's going to happen, and so what do? I move into control. But if I am in a place of wants and passions and desires, if my choices are in this place, I desire that. Because of my love for you, I desire this. Because of my love for myself, I desire this. Out of the love choices, my wants and my passions can, and I'm talking about all the right ones, not the wrong ones, right? All the right ones. I can make choices based out of that. But how does a free people discover how to make those kinds of choices? Could I suggest to you that and this kind of all ties together, you'll see this, but that our reference for making decisions has to be somewhere. Where is the reference for your decisions? Where is that the anchor, that reference point where you make decisions from? Where is it? Is it fear? Or is it love? It's got to be one or the other. They displace one another. Where is the reference? Could I suggest to you that our reference for making decisions is the nature of God? And the nature of God is not something that's separated from you. It's not something out there somewhere. But the nature of God, actually, He has instilled it in you when He breathed life into you. When He seeded you, when He breathed life into you, when He made mankind, He seeded into you His very nature. Could I suggest that the image of God, the language of Scripture is often inadequate, but the language of the image of God that Genesis talks about as Moses wrote Genesis, that the image of God in us is more than a snapshot. That the image of God is more than a representation of who God is. That could it be that the image of God was actually His presence in us? That He breathed life into us. When He breathed life, it wasn't like He breathed, it wasn't that He just gave us, that's what you're going to look like someday. That actually when He called mankind good, it was because they were good. that the goodness of God, the nature of God was manifesting in them. And they were good. And so this nature piece, this nature of God, this connection, this fusion, that it was instilled in mankind from the beginning. And here's the trick. Now this might twist you just a little bit, but work with me a little bit. That image never left us. That the breath of God, the life of God, the image of God, the nature of God has never left us. But we lost sight of it. We lost sight of it, and Jesus came to reveal that again to us. That it is the nature of God that is your true identity. It is the nature of God, and it's the nature of this fusion of you and Him together. It's not that God is trying to make us more like Him. He's trying to get us to believe that we have never been disconnected from Him in image, in His nature. But obviously when you think about our thoughts process and what we think about, and then how our behaviors, a manifestation of our thoughts, then we get into this place of I have lived disconnected. I've lived that reality. How about this? Another question. How do you equip a people to operate out of their passions while honoring the hearts of others around them that may be affected by their choice? How do you equip a people to operate out of their passions, out of their wants, out of their desires, while honoring the hearts of others around them that may be affected by their choice? It's going to require self-control. It's going to require you to consider the hearts of others around you, even as your own heart you consider. We pushed a little bit on this last week, that we've never really been equipped to love ourselves well. Because we've been told that we shouldn't be loving ourselves. We got to debase ourselves, right? Oh, I'm so rotten, I'm so lowly, I'm so broken. Oh, that whole idea of more of you, God, and less of me. More of you, God, and less of me, right? You've heard that before? Which is really taken out of context. It was John the Baptist that made that comment. And he was talking about the ministry of Christ becoming more, and the ministry that he was doing. In other words, the emphasis was going on what Christ was saying, not necessarily what John was saying. But we've taken that because the culture that we've lived in is we have we've taken this whole humility thing and pushed it out of context, so much so. Don't think more highly of yourself than you ought. We don't, guys, we really don't have a problem with it. We don't think of ourselves highly enough. We haven't been taught to love ourselves well. And so if we're supposed to love our neighbors as ourselves, and we don't even know how to love ourselves well, how do you think it's working out when we're trying to love others? All this stuff, all these things are all kind of swimming around this thing called self-control. So where do free people learn self-control? Where do we learn it? And the only place I go to is this place. I got to go back to the one who made me as a reference point. I got to go back to the one who made me as a reference point. Wait a minute. You're a God. Again, God's not His name, right? I mean, it's just a title. It's just a mankind limited description of this great, of this other, this creator, this maker, this designer. So from the one who designed us, I have to go to that one who designed me and saying, how do you look? Oh yeah, you are the maker, and you choose self-control. Which means that God, how many of you know that God is the one who defines God, right? I mean, he's the one who defines, He's the one that's chosen to be who He wanted to be. Does that make sense? I know I get a little lofty here, but the uncreated one, Have you ever thought about, ask the question, why is he the way he is? It's because he chose to be that way. And you know he continues to choose to be that way? Do you understand that's the definition of holiness, right? That holiness means that I'm choosing this and I'm not letting anything else change my mind about it. There's nothing that's going to contaminate that. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing to be holy. I'm not holy in the fact that I'm pure and you can't be close to me. That's that fear thing. No, I'm pure, I am who I am, and I can engage you fully and not be afraid. That's why Jesus could go into any kind of atmosphere, and the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all these different religious sects, S-E-C-T-S, were all freaking out because they thought that the environments were going to contaminate them. And he could walk into any environment and it wasn't going to change who he was. How come? Because he knew he was manifesting the attribute of God, the attribute of this nature piece of God, self-control. I can walk into any environment, and because of my choice, I will not let that impact me or change my choice or change. So you understand what I'm saying? So in order for us, though, to see him clearly, we have to, in the self-control piece, in order for us to understand what self-control means, we have to see our God as one who is in self-control. Perfect control of himself. Now that changes a little bit of the narrative for us. It changes some of that, our theology. That, wait a minute, he's in control of himself, which means if he's trying to propagate that, and he wants us to learn what self-control means, that even in the essence of self-control means I don't control other things. I'm not controlling other people. Look at this. Self-control, right out of the dictionary. Self-control would state this, that I'm in total control of my choice and am responsible for that choice. I do not take responsibility for the choices of others, nor will I control them if they would choose different than me. That's self-control. Let me read it again. Self-control would state this, that I am in control of my choice and am responsible for that choice. I do not take responsibility for the choices of others, nor will I control them if they would choose different than me. 2 Timothy 1:7, scripture verse on that. We'll just make this legal. For God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power and of love and of self-discipline. The Mirror Bible says it this way, become fully acquainted with his gift in you. There is nothing timid about it. The dynamic of a mind liberated in the spirit of love is fearless and unstoppable. Self-control says, I can tell myself what to do, and I am responsible to do that very thing. That's self-control. So, in regard to how I relate to other people, I have the ability to choose a goal of loving someone. I have the ability to choose the goal of intimate connection, to protect, connect. Those are my choices. But in that, I am controlling my half of the relationship. I'm in control of my half. I'm in control of what comes out of me. And I'm not in control of what comes out of you. And you're not going to scare me into trying to take control of you. Because I will refuse to do that. Because I recognize I am in control of me and I am not in control of you. You are not my responsibility. Your choice is not my responsibility. But what happens? We're so afraid that someone's choice is going to impact me in a negative way. I don't want to go through that pain. I don't want to go through that discomfort. And so what happens? I rise up and I try to manipulate your choice. I try to get you to choose. In fact, if I could choose for you, I would. Right? So, when I'm in this place of being in control of myself, I cannot blame you for how I'm behaving towards you. You don't make me do anything. Oh, he made me so angry. You ever hear that before? When I am in the freedom of self-control, I cannot blame you for how I'm behaving towards you. You never you are never in charge of how I treat you. You are not in charge of how I treat you. I'm the one that's in charge of how I treat you. Now, I might be having a lousy day. I might be discouraged about something. I might respond to you inappropriately, dishonoringly, whatever. I might be short in my answer towards you, and it might create some momentum one way or another in the relationship. But ultimately, I'm the one that has to take ownership of how I just behaved, of how I just spoke. It would be great in a relationship that is in an intimate place where if I would respond in a short way, that the other person would know, well, wow, something's going on inside of them that's creating that shortness. Oh, I wonder if what's going on? What's going on inside of you? I recognize there the way that you responded, man, it's really communicated to me that, man, there's something going on creating tension. Because that's just not like you. That's not normal for you to do that. So I'm not, you know what I'm saying? But it's this conversation that goes on. And so it's this desire to protect connection. It's this desire to protect connection. I have to choose in self-control. I choose to not be afraid of choices that you might make, even if they may cause me pain. I will not be afraid of your choice, even if it might cause me pain. You don't make me afraid. I choose fear. Or I choose love. Remember that movie clip that we saw, right? After Earth. Fear is a choice that we make. But this dualism, we've talked about, it's difficult to shift, to move away from the idea of controlling others when we've been taught. I mean, again, just reference your prayers. How many prayers have you ever said to God in our communication? That's what prayer is, right? It's just conversation. It's our conversation to God, and it's our waiting for His response. It's this prayer. It's this communication. How many of your prayers are situational prayers, where you're asking God to control a circumstance? I mean, on a percentage scale. I mean, you just think about it. It's not a public answer here, but it's a rhetorical. How many of our prayers have we been taught to pray or ask? And at the root of our prayers, we're asking God to control people. And the reason we're asking God to control people is because we're afraid that that person might make a wrong choice or something is going to end up bad, and it's all fear-related. And the reality is, again, man, this just goes, you got to start untangling all these different knots all the way upstream in our theology with God. If God is in perfect control of Himself and He's not afraid of your choice, then why would He ever want to control you? Yes, He cares about our hearts. And yes, He doesn't want the destruction, the choices that we make to create destructive momentum in our life and the lives of others. But does He step in and control circumstances because He's afraid? Does He step in and control circumstance or people's choices, the outcomes of people's choice? Is that who He is? See, your answer there will either enhance the dualism that you're carrying, and so you're kind of saying, well, I don't know. God's fickle. I just don't know. I don't know what to anticipate from Him. I don't know if He wants to heal, if He doesn't want to heal. I don't know if I should ask for this or should ask for this. And so then we get into this crisis of, man, I don't even know what should I be praying about? Ask Him what you should be praying about. Ask Him what aspects of His heart and His nature He's looking for you to agree with. He's desiring you to agree with. See, in this way that we pray, it's infiltrated. See, the question, we ask God to control our circumstance or the choice of another because of our desire for something or the fear of something. But and oftentimes, it's what we can't control, we're asking Him to control. So that we'll feel better. So that we won't be afraid. And so then when we don't see the answer to our prayer, we conclude, oh, that God doesn't really answer prayers. Or somehow he's strangely silent, or maybe he said no. You know, is that, what is that warning? Yes, no, or wait. Yeah, whatever. Because what if what I prayed for was not in my best interest from his divine point of view? What if what I prayed for was actually something that is in his heart too, but he doesn't control people? And so his desire is with our desire, but yet he's not going to override someone's will for your benefit, whether you're his favorite or not. Because it's not in his nature to do so. You know, you get those questions, well, yeah, can God make a rock too big for himself to pick up? You know? You ask these really stupid questions. I mean, they're really stupid questions. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to catch God. We're trying to see, I knew you weren't as good as I thought you were, or whatever. And it's this idea that when I'm praying and I'm asking for things, and I'm wanting to understand, are my prayers, do a double check on your prayers. When you're talking to God, is your prayer first off based in fear? And are you asking God to do something that's against his nature? We see a lot of prayers in Scripture that are being said, but even by David, that are actually against God's nature. David is expressing his heart. Oh God, I want you to wipe those guys out. Get them off the planet, you know. I'm so ripped. I'm so ticked, man. I hate them. I'm so afraid. Do we see God wipe off the planet? No. See, the question is, does God do anything against his nature? Does God control or manipulate circumstance for our benefit? Does he do that? It's a question that you have to answer. Does he control people's choices, or is that against his nature to control people's choices? Does he control yours? Start right there. Is God in control of your choices? I really want that Three Musketeers bar, but something's stopping me. It must be God. Does God control your choices, or do you? And then just exponentially, you got to branch that out. Just logically, you say, well, if he doesn't control my choice, if I'm in control of my choice, and I can even actually do things, I could actually take the life of another person if I chose to. And God didn't stop me. Does that mean that God takes people's lives? Can a life giver be a life taker, or is that an Indian giver? I don't even know where that came from. That could be a dishonoring phrase, and I didn't mean it dishonoringly. So, just thought of that. So, but the idea is, again, it comes back, do we really have a correct understanding of God's nature? Do we really understand who he's described himself as? Does God control? And if so, what does he control? And I would say that, again, we come back to this idea that if the fruit of the Spirit, if Galatians is true, and it's talking about the fruit of who God is, and it talks about self-control as a fruit, an aspect of who he is, then we know he's in perfect control of himself. And he follows through with that. That's his faithfulness at work. So when I begin to recognize that I'm in control of myself and I have responsibility for the choices that I'm making, now my prayers, instead of my prayers being about what other people are doing, my prayers turn to me and say, Father, would you help me? I'm the only one that's in control of me. I need wisdom in controlling me. I can tell you my heart, man, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that, man, it'd be nice if they chose this, it'd be nice if they were in conversation, but I recognize that I'm not in control of that, and I know that you're not in control of their choice either. So I need your help in controlling me. I want to make a decision based upon us, the way we're thinking together. I want to be able your nature is fused with my nature, and so I want to think more like you. I want to act more like you. I don't want there to be this dualism in me that I say I love you and that you love me, but I don't love my neighbor. I don't want to say, God, I know you're my provider, and I trust you're my provider, but there's a person in need next to me, and I refuse to provide for them. I don't want these disconnects. I want to be the flow. I want to be the conduit upon which your nature is getting into the earth. And I'm responsible for that. I'm responsible for my choices. I'm responsible for that connection. And you say, well, where does freedom come in? Freedom is this. Freedom is not me powering up over another person so I can control my environment and feel safe. That's not freedom. Are we free as a country because we're more powerful than our neighbor? Is that why we're free? Are we free because we're intimidating to them and they're afraid of us? Is that why we're free? Because we've created a fear of reprisal as a deterrent? So that sounds a lot like control to me. That's not like freedom. Freedom is this. Freedom is when I can be fully me and let you be fully you and have no fear. That's freedom. I can be fully me and I'm not afraid when you're fully you. If I have no fear, there's no need to control. See, you are truly free when you no longer need external controls. You are truly free when you no longer need external controls. When you remove external controls and all you have left is internal controls, that's called self-control. So I'm asking internally, what should I choose to do here? What should I choose to do? I'm responsible. I'm thinking, my feelings, where are they coming? Are they living from fear? Are they living from love? Wait a minute. So that's not even being imposed upon me. Whether I live from fear or love, that's my choice. Yeah, it is. Are your thoughts primarily about you first? It's a good chance you might be being influenced by fear. If my thoughts are about others first, it's a good chance you might be influenced by love. See, the reference point is important because it's my picture of the divine. It's my picture of God. This is where Jesus becomes so helpful for us. Is Jesus said to us that he was the perfect representation of the Father. So as we're trying to understand the picture of who God is, we're trying to get a grasp on it. The finite trying to grasp the infinite, which is just ludicrous to begin with. But just let's say we're working at it. Jesus comes and reveals to us the heart of the Father that everyone before him, all the way to Adam, never experienced to the fullness. And that everyone were virtually acting like an orphan. Some of the language again in the song today was good. But we act like an orphan. We act like we're fatherless. In other words, we don't have a reference point for who we are. I mean, even when you get into, I'm not an expert at this, so at this whole science, the science of things, but even when you look at the created order and you go through all this kind of stuff and you have different influences that are, everything's based in science. My understanding of science is the ability, science is the It's the capacity to observe and then reveal something that is, right? So here when we made this observation, and now here it is. So here's gravity. Okay, let's do this. Let's say now we observe that, right? And so science observes this. But how many of you know that science hasn't observed everything there is to observe? So it's still growing, right? But science really is the observation of things that can be reproduced and all this kind of stuff, right? So, but ultimately, everything that science can't define by observation is all belief. It's all faith of some kind. So it really all is. I believe that. So that's where I'm at. And then science kind of comes after belief and ratifies certain things, right? But just because science can't ratify it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It's still in a belief state. It's not in a science state yet, right? So it's that kind of thing. You understand what I'm saying? So in this, where was I going to go with that? In this, so everyone has the capacity to choose their reference point. From my perspective, I would rather choose a reference point that I'm pretty complex as a human being. And because I desire to have a purpose, I'm looking for a reference point that's bigger than me. In fact, really, when you think about science itself is looking for a reference point that's constant. It's looking for a reference point that's constant, that can be counted on all the time. It's looking for it. And you know what? It's still looking for it because it still doesn't happen. And even when you get down to the quantum physics level, down to the quantum, they're thinking, oh, we got it now. And then they find out as they discover a new technology where they can see even smaller than they saw before, that what they thought was not what they thought. And it's just ever growing. Our awareness and the complexities are ever growing. But in my heart, in my desire, I'm saying, wait a minute, there's purpose, there's design, there's all this kind of stuff. So there must be, I'm thinking upstream, where? And so I'm looking for that reference point. And so even in my own journey, in the journey of One Community Church, we've chosen to say, well, Jesus is going to be our reference. We've chosen to declare a reference point. And even in our understanding of Jesus, you understand that Jesus was a finite expression of an infinite God. So Jesus is not the ceiling of our experience with God. He's our floor. And so the thing that Jesus brought more than any other thing was trying to connect our hearts back to a Father. To one who cares for us, who loves us, who is not separate from us, who is connected to us. And I know that it leaves things messy. But that's what freedom does. Freedom leaves things messy. Because I can't control my environment. And I can't control you. So we got to get comfortable with our mess. The messes that people do around us. Little Rowan comes out of mommy, right? And probably for the first 10 minutes, I would say for Rowan, it was involuntary. But he was making messes, man. He was just making messes. And they clean him up and he makes another mess. They clean him up and make another mess before they could get a diaper on the guy. You know? They're making messes everywhere. Now, people could get really uncomfortable with that. Because we want mess-free environments. There's a phrase out there, I think Danny Silk coins it, there are no poopless cows. We got to get comfortable with messes. But if my connection, with my relationship, if you're valuable to me, I'll put up with the messes. I'll put up with the messes. If you're valuable to me, I can see the value in you. If I can see the God who made you, I can see His design in you. I can get excited about you. I don't have to be controlling you. You understand where I'm going with all that? See, you get to be you in a right relationship, in a free relationship. when you're in self-control and the other person in relationship with you is in self-control, you get to be you, they get to be them, and you guys might not like what you see all the time. So the choice is now, the question is, what are you going to do? When you don't like what you see in someone, what will you do? It won't make you do anything. You will have to choose what you will do. Will you protect connection? Or will you want to protect will you want to get rid of the discomfort that you have? Will you move to empower people by telling them the truth about what's going on inside of you? Don't tell them the truth about what you think is going on inside of them. It's not very helpful, unless they're asking, help me to see. Then you have permission. But see, you're in charge of your truth. We talked about this a few weeks ago. You're in charge of your truth, which means you're in charge of your trust. Because trust is based in truth. Trust is not based in your expectation that they might make or a choice that you agree with. So if they don't make the choice that you anticipated, now you don't trust them? No, that's a wrong definition of trust. Trust is, I am going to bring the truth about me into this relationship. This is what's going on inside of me. And not even expecting that they are going to come and tell you the truth about them. But if they can't, it may be because they don't feel safe yet. Because there's an exchange of truth when there's a sense of safety. All right. So the self-control thing, guys, here we are. We realize that I'm in charge of my life and I'm responsible for it. And I'm no longer going to let anybody else control it. Because the reality is they're not in control of me anyway. I just let them control me. We're the ones that set our ceilings in relationships. We're the ones that do that. There's a verse, and again, I think the thing that we're longing for as a people is we're looking for constancy. We're looking for something that we know will always be the same. And that brings us comfort. That's why Christmas is so important. That's why the tree, the traditions. Traditions have a way of making us feel comfortable. It's familiar. Right? There's beauty in traditions. But what we're looking for ultimately is we're looking for the constant that I can count on that. And I think all mankind, I think everyone is looking for that. I really do. I mean, we can mask it in different ways, but we're all looking for that. What can I count on? What is there? And in Isaiah 54:10, it says this, the mountains may be removed and the hills may be shaken, but my loving kindness will not be removed from you, and my covenant of peace will not be shaken. Just stop right there. See, the constancies, that's where this idea of the faith in God, of believing in this divine, and this trusting that Jesus gave us a big enough picture that we can get our head and heart around it. That we actually can believe in something beyond Judaism, which is really the teachings of the Old Testament, and then all of the tensions that brings. But when I go to Jesus, Jesus wasn't he wasn't the first Christian. He wasn't the last Judaism. I mean, those kind of things are too limiting. He exampled to us something greater. He was exempling to us something that we can trust. He was trying to put our hearts at ease. At the same time, how many times did Jesus stir our hearts up? But he was also trying to put, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. How can you say, Peter, show us the Father? When I've been right here all along. That I don't do anything that I don't see my Father doing. Jesus had this connection, this understanding, this awareness with his Father in heaven, with the divine. He had this connection, and he was demonstrating that all the time. He's just demonstrating his heart. See, God is saying, I think there's an aspect of God where God is wanting us to know that He's not unpredictable. He's not fickle like the Greek gods and gods of Rome. He's not fickle. His nature is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. He can be counted on. He wants us to become completely sure of His attitude towards us. He doesn't ever want us to think that He stopped loving us or that our actions could actually make Him go away from us. There's nothing that has power over Him. In fact, there is nothing that can separate you from the love of God. Nothing. Nothing ever did separate you from the love of God. But our eyes were darkened. We took on a wrong belief, and that became sin. God is saying to us, my kindness, my covenant of peace will never be taken away. Who I am, you can count on. That's what God's wanting to say. And when we move into this place of self-control, and we come into a place of, I say, I will bring the truth of what's going on inside of me into this relationship. I will bring this. I'm not expect the truth from you. I would like to have that, but I won't expect it. But I will bring the truth about me here. And when you can bring the truth about who you are into the relationship, you are free. I think we all long for that, don't we? To have relationships. Another way to say it is where you can be loved and fully loved. Known and be fully known. Celebrate and be fully celebrated. Relationship. Intimacy. No fear. That's what God's doing in us. Let me read just a quote from Danny Silk out of his book, The Practice of Honor, and then we'll close. But he says this, he says, no matter what case you make against God, no matter which scriptures you use to make it, no matter what you do to build a different reality, His kindness and His peace will never be taken away from you. That word peace is literally the Hebrew word for shalom. From this word we get several powerful definitions, but it's this idea of well, happy, friendly, welfare, health, prosperity, peace, favor, friend, health, safety, rest, wholeness. And then he emphasizes the first. Please notice that the first definition was safe. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do, Danny says? He says, as your saying goes, the best defense is a good offense. So you're simply not going to be successful at setting boundaries if most of your time is spent defending yourself against the requests and demands of consumers. A good plan of offense is making sure your focus is fixed on cultivating the resources inside of you, inside of your garden, and directing the bulk of those resources towards mutually beneficial, healthy relationships. He says, keep your love on. Whose responsibility is it for it? For us to love one another? It's ours. You're in charge of your love. You're in charge. So what are you going to do? See, that's a question. That's a powerful question we can ask one another. Well, what are you going to do? Because it says, I'm not going to do this for you. I'm not picking up your responsibility. I'm with you. I'm not backing away either. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I want to watch. I want to be your cheerleader. I want to see this happen. What are you going to do? All right, one more quote, right? Sorry, one more quote. As a powerful person, Danny says in the book, Keep Your Love On, you'll always want to be focused on what you have the power to control yourself. You'll also want your choices to be defined by the priorities you have committed yourself to, not by the choices of other people. So when you tell someone what you're going to do, ask yourself, am I making this choice to protect my priorities? Am I making sure that I am the only person telling, am I making sure that I am only telling this person what I will do and not telling them what they need to do? Will I honestly be okay no matter what that person does? It's important to be able to answer yes to these questions. if you want to maintain a successful offense in keeping your boundaries. Oh. Danny's my hero. I mean, this is great. All right, stand together. Let's pray together.